Reports of UFOs in the media are up and probably will increase this year because of U.S. military reports of engagement with unidentified flying objects. Despite these increased sightings, reports of alien abductions have been fewer since 2012, and no one really knows why. Online statistics vary as to how many Americans feel they've been abducted. Tonight, a very personal alien experience. Kimberly O'Connor is an abductee and experiencer. How do we begin to describe an experience that is so incredible, the only word we can come up with is extraterrestrial? Kim describes years of abductions and experiences that for some would be terrifying. However, she says this is part of our life and we have to accept it because we live amongst aliens. Hey, this is Cam Brower, and I want to ask you to please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you are listening and hit those like buttons and also leave a comment. You do that and it makes it so much easier for others to find me. Kimberly O'Connor, a personal experience tonight.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, one, zero, and liftoff.
My guest tonight is an experiencer and abductee, and up to fairly recently, Kimberly O'Connor has kept this part of her life classified to even her closest family. Kimberly O'Connor, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you for inviting me, Cameron.
Absolutely. I am so impressed by your openness now and your willingness to share your experiences. What was the event in your life that, made you decide you wanted others to hear about what you've been through?
I guess being in some UFO groups prior and just being ridiculed when I first started opening up about my experience and things that led up to that. And the ridicule was ridiculous. I mean, and there's no call for it. When you experience something, you know what you're experiencing, but to call people out of their name and to make them feel like they don't have a clue about what they're talking about when they really do, I knew that I had to do something. And it wasn't until I left that group that night that my phone got blown up. I mean, they were people that were in the group that sat back on the sidelines and just listened are the ones that was blowing up my phone because they had experiences of their own. They were asking for my help to understand what they were seeing and what was happening and going on. And it took me a while, and it took my daughter to push me as well as my son-in-law to open up my own group because there's a call for it.
So I'm always amazed when I hear experiencers describe their life and what made them come forward with their story. And a lot of them have waited such a long time to share even a UFO story, much less an abduction story. So I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the process. And sometimes it's hard to initially get your story out. And then when you do, sometimes you do face that ridicule. So the skepticism, how did you handle that?
When you go through something, nobody can change what you already know, what you've already experienced, what you've already seen. So, it's always good to be skeptical. I welcome that instead of somebody that's totally gullible and will believe everything. I mean, even I had to see to believe. I mean, even though I knew all along, even as a young child, that there's got to be more than what we're seeing right now with what we are, because we're on one planet. There's so many others, as well as the stars that can be occupied, and they probably are, most likely.
So did you always have an interest in the paranormal, and were you pursuing that interest and keeping quiet about your own experiences at the same time?
Well, it started at a young age when I started seeing things that others wasn't seeing, even in my family. With my mother, my sisters, I never shared any of this. They don't even know even now. It wasn't until, as a child, maybe between 2 and 4, that I seen a robot type thing outside the window at night, even though the people that were raising me were sitting right in front of it, and there was no movement from them at all. But yet I didn't say anything. It was like I knew not to.
So why do you think some of us are able to see and experience something so literally out of this world, while, others can't see it at all?
I think that's really kind of like a simple question. A simple answer, because the research that I've done, following other people's stories as well as my own, this isn't just a random thing. This is a generational family issue, where it makes it easier to follow and keep track, even though you're only going to have 1 or 2 out of the family, out of each generation that are going to be tested or watched, because it's not necessary to watch all of them.
Do you think there's an abduction generation, or possibly, I don't know, an abduction part of the family? I know of instances where the entire family's been abducted, and I know of instances where 1 or 2 out of the family has been abducted, and I know where only 1 has been abducted. Do you think that's a common thread, or is it more common for just one person to be taken from that family unit without everybody else even noticing or knowing?
I would say it's more common to see 1 or 2 go in each generation. I've not really known anything as the whole entire family going, unless it's of distant generations. There are stories of, and reports of like 3 or 4 generations going at the same time: the grandmother, the mother, and the son. That's 3 generations right there.
So take us through your experience. Yeah, I think so too. Take us through your experiences and tell us when your contact started and how and what that really meant to you.
Well, I started, it was difficult. I've been through a bad childhood to start with, which I'm finding that's kind of common, as well as in a lot of abductees cases. But I noticed that the pregnancies were strange. That I would get through the first 3 months, and all of a sudden bleeding would start, and this was in my early 20s. And it was difficult for me to, actually, it was just like 19, 20 years old, and I had just gotten married, that all of a sudden there's no sign of a pregnancy. So that was kind of odd, and that you're not crazy. A woman knows when she's pregnant, especially when you've already gone through the test and everything, and then all of a sudden for the doctor to tell you there's no sign of a pregnancy. people aren't crazy. There are reports of this a lot, but what is promoted as or shown as a dream is really not a dream. When I was taken, and I remember that I was shown, it was like in a darkened room with very minimal light, but there were rows and rows of boxes of looked like babies that were not moving or anything, that were lifeless. But to the left of me, I seen like vats of liquid with beings in them, and I don't recall. I'm not going to say that they were human, but they could have been hybrid, being, developing, let's say.
So was this an instance where you were taken out of your home, or how did this all start? I mean, were you at home? Were you out of the house?
I wasn't in the house. I would say that I had to have been on the craft, even though at no point do I remember ever leaving except for maybe one time, and that was in the later years. But earlier on, they only allow you to remember what they want you to remember because they're triggers. They're trigger memories for you to remember this happened or that happened, or sometimes in some instances nothing at all. Because when it seems like a dream, it's less evasive.
So this was pretty.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So this is a trauma for you. That's doesn't sound like a good experience so far.
Well, when I was losing the children, yeah, it was traumatizing. But when I was shown, it's like I understood. It's like I understood the agenda. I understood, and I think I understand even now exactly the point of this whole thing happening, at least for the ones that I dealt with. Now, when and I'm going to say when I was taken one time and there was somebody that I knew right next to me, I did freak out. That was the only time I had a bad experience. I didn't have a bad experience before, where it was traumatizing and I was just, it's like I understood. Because I seriously believe that we are, for a lack of a better word, we kind of agree to do this prior to coming here. If that makes any sense.
Let's back up just a bit, and I want to understand where you were when you were abducted. Were you at home, and all of a sudden you're ripped out of your home, and you're in an alien world, or were you outside when this happened? Where were you?
No, I don't know how it goes. I don't know how it happened. It's just that I was just shown this is where they are, and it's not that I was happy about it. It's just that they give you an understanding, at least the ones that I had, that I dealt with. Like I said, it's like there's an agreement, I guess, an understanding. But when I seen the person beside me the one time, I was not happy about that at all.
Did you actually make contact with aliens? Did you see the aliens? Or were there aliens?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I remember at one time, because I've gone several times, that I remember actually asking to touch the one's skin. But before I did that, I remember, and everything is telepathic. There's no sound. Nothing's verbal.
Any other sounds there? I mean, could you hear? Can you hear even your own breathing or your heart beating?
Everything is internal. Every sound is internal. When I was upset, I could hear me screaming, and I could feel my tears running down my face because they burnt. And when I woke up in the morning, my pillow was soaked from screaming and crying. But like I said, everything's internal. But they assured me that that person was not being hurt, that they was just running tests. And I, at no time have I ever been in pain or felt any pain or been to the point of where they were doing testing and I was hurt. So I understand that many have. I have not.
So they were testing you?
Yeah, at that point. When it was like we were on beds, I would say, or gurneys, or whatever. And I guess there was testing going on. And I was told, through mental telepathy that, they were only testing and the person was not being hurt. And because that was important to me.
What about yourself?
I was.
Did you feel any sensation of whatever tests they were running on you? Could you feel that?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And when they seen that and told me, like I said, telepathically, that they're only running tests and that person would not be hurt, it was like lights out, but I could still feel the tears running down my face. But there was no pain at all, none.
What about fear?
No, I've never had fear. That's the one thing I'm happy about, and I understand that others have had terrifying experiences. I have not. I don't have fear because I have the understanding. I mean, and somebody with an open mind, everyone should, at least try to understand that we're not the only beings in all of these different places in the universe. There are going to be other beings, and at some point we're going to cross paths, and we have many years ago. I mean, and there's hybrids that walk, amongst us now. And in actuality, we're hybrids ourselves.
Being abducted and then being examined is terribly invasive, and it's the ultimate, how should I put it, the ultimate intrusion in our life, whether it's done by a human being or by an alien. Is this something you were able to deal with and cope with and get over, or is it something that bothers you?
I never went, and I guess because I never felt them testing me. I guess I didn't have a problem with that. Like I said, I believe that we have the understanding that of an agreement among them. And there's so many different species that it'll vary from species to humans as well. Everybody reacts differently, for different reasons.
Try to describe for me the interior of the craft or the room that you were in.
Well, at that time during testing, everything just seemed to be like a dark gray. I mean, it wasn't a lit area, a very lit area like many have described. And I say that because there are so many different species in there. Everybody's crafts are not the same, just like our cars are all other vehicles are not the same as well. But in that particular room, it was like a dimmed light, that lit. Whereas where the boxes of what seemed like lifeless babies or little beings, that was a darker area where very minimal light was shown. It was more dark than it was light of any kind. Whereas on the front of where the control panels are, where, I guess you would say everything's controlled, you could see there was a huge window that you could actually see out, and everything was like, lit minimally. I mean, it was comfortable. It wasn't bright light or it wasn't real dark at that point. It's more rounded. The walls, I would say, the walls and the ceilings all kind of curve inward to each other.
When you looked out the window, were you looking at space? Were you looking at nothing? What did you see?
What I seen and what always excited me was the fact of how fast they could go and not run into anything. Nothing hit, nothing crashed. So it was like going light speed. We were going fast, but yet the body or was not affected by it in any way. I mean, actually, it was easier to stand there than on an airplane, or just as easily when you're standing up in an airplane. There was no difference. You didn't even feel you were moving. No turbulence, nothing like that.
Did you try to move or talk?
You didn't have to talk. Yeah, I could move.
You could move.
I mean,
Interesting.
yeah, and see, this is the one thing that I kept to myself until I was in when I was in a group, and a gentleman from from Ireland contacted me, and he said that there was something that he had shared that he had never shared with anybody else. So yeah, there's something that I've never shared with nobody. I mean, absolutely nobody, not nobody. I kept it all to myself for the simple fact that I thought that it made me feel special to be able to be up front, to be mobile, to be able to touch them, to sit among them as one, at the controls. I know it sounds irate, but it's the truth. And I never shared that with anybody. And all of a sudden we shared our same experience almost word for word. That was the one thing that he kept to himself and never shared as well.
How old were
and
you?
He's from a different country.
Yeah. How old were you when you experienced this for your first time? That you remember? How old was your earliest experience?
First time, I'm going to say my early 20s.
Early 20s. So were you living alone at the time, or were you living with other people, your parents?
No, I was married at the time. My husband at the time was worked midnight, and I had one of my twins, which only one of them lived. The other one passed 18 hours after it was born, but they were 5.5 months early.
Wow.
So I had him on a heart monitor and oxygen. And it was at that time that things started happening.
Did you tell your husband?
Yeah, but he didn't believe me. And that was cool. I was all right with that, because it just like I said, it sounds outlandish, but I'm not going to sit there and continue talking about it and, and be ridiculed, because he was just not one to believe anything. And I've always been considered odd because I was able to hear, see, and, people that others couldn't. And that goes back to the paranormal. And that was when I was very young, like 8 years old.
So you were kind of dabbling in the paranormal back then when you were 8. What give me an example of what you were interested in when you were 8 years old?
I was just interested. I love the stars. I love space, dinosaurs and things like that. I was kind of like always a kid that was withdrawn. So I kind of stayed to myself. So reading was my best friend. So, but when I seen my first craft, I was about 13, 14 years old. And there was no mistaking what that was. That looked like a mothership. And it was not that far from my mother's house, because I got home early from school and looked out the back window as I'm making something to eat. And there it is. I mean, it was like, I would say 2 or 3 blocks away, but it was about as wide as like one and a half football fields. It was huge. And I couldn't take my eyes off of it because I didn't want to miss anything. So I was taking in all the details of it. And as soon as I turned my head to yell for the lady that lived with us and turned back around, it was gone. And I was really upset about that.
So was it a big metallic object, or describe what it looked like? In what shape?
Yes, it was a disc shaped, and it had wraparound windows all the way around it. There was no sound, and it was a fall day, and it was it was smooth. There was nothing on the bottom that indicated anything for landing either. Like I said, I took pretty much everything in at one time, but you just didn't want to take your eyes off of it. When you see something that big and that different that you've never seen before and didn't never expect to see. I mean, at that point, I didn't have, I don't think like any interest in, that was the last thing I would have expected to see coming home to make a sandwich after school.
Yeah, especially, yeah, absolutely. One thing that you said that I find really interesting is that you said that you feel that we have an agreement with them. Do you think that possibly, now I've heard this before, that we have an agreement, and doesn't happen always individually, but this is a lifetime thing that you buy into, and kids start having experiences as far back as they remember, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And, you're interested in different things when you're 8 years old, and then you see a giant mothership when you're 14 or 15 years old. To me, that sounds like, that could be why you possibly thought that you had an agreement, because it was something that you had been dealing with a while. Do you feel like there could have been things that happened back then when you were younger that you don't remember?
Quite possibly. They only allow you to remember what they want you to remember. And like I said, seeing a craft, automatically now you're gonna have interest in it. You're gonna want to know more. And that's with anything though. When something's so odd, you see sparks. It makes you spark your interest. You want to know more about it, so you kind of put your toe in the water and just kind of want to find out more. But I remember when I was like even a little bit younger than that, when I was in 6th grade, I did a science report, an oral book report. I was never good at speaking in front of a group of people, but I was excited about doing that one because at the end I said, it was about stars and space and everything. We would be fools to think that we were the only ones of all these planets and stars. We would be foolish to think that. And I remember the class was silent, and I was feeling kind of nervous about that. And the teacher went and got another teacher and made me reread it again, and then all they could do is just look at each other. And at that point, I knew that I did something. They never spoke of it. It was never brought up. It was, he never took me aside. But I knew that I was right. I knew that I was right.
I think everybody has a little bit of that alien inside of them, maybe an experience they can't really touch, but something that they can't describe either. So it does make them feel uncomfortable because they know that possibly deep inside there's a memory, and they don't want to deal with it. Let me ask you this. I think it's very profound that you actually came up with that on your own, because a lot of little kids like that, don't think in terms like that and realize the vastness of space. So saying that being said, do you feel that these aliens, these visitors that abducted you, are they space travelers, or are they from Earth in the future? Any idea where they may have came from?
I'm sure that I'd ask, but I don't have any memory recall on that. And to go back to when I was in school, I'm 57. I'm not ashamed of saying that. So this was in 72, 73 when I did the book report. So this was early. This was kind of like before things were talked about. And even, it took quite a few years, a couple decades before people actually started talking about it openly. So yeah, I was early on that one.
It's interesting because I'm 53, and I always say that your generation, my generation, we're experiencers, because there are a lot of us that have had the same type of experience. And, I wonder if if our children and their children, have those same kind of experiences, because I think ours were fairly different, and although unique, and a lot of us had those same experiences. So now we hear of so many people talking about their experiences, and I've heard people even talk about that they've met up to 60 different kinds of aliens, which not only is that a lot, it would be confusing, and how you would keep track of that and remember that, I don't know. But as you know, it's traumatic, so you're going to remember it in certain detail. Why do you think that they don't want us to remember? A lot of people describe it as memory erasing. Why do you think that they don't want us to know or remember?
Well, I guess it goes back to like we're basically tests, I guess. And the way that I've figured out, we try to modify and perfect everything in life, be it a plant, be it an animal, make it bigger, stronger, faster. From the beginning of time, man has changed along the way as well. So we're modified each time. Each time, let's say, a different era goes by, that being got a little more intelligent, a little more agile, supposedly a little smarter, but now I question things at times. But I think I lost thought. What was the question again?
That's all right. Let me throw this at you, because to me, this is, I appreciate you being on, and I appreciate you telling me about this. And to me, this is a very, very personal and special experience. I do have experiencers and abductees that I've talked to who have written books, and they've been on dozens of different shows and TV and podcasts. But to me, I feel from you that this is very, very personal, and it's not an easy thing to deal with a lot of times, and especially what you've been through when people were skeptics and they had a hard time with your account of what really happened to you. There's a definite physical experience that some of us have, and it's called sleep paralysis. Now, I'm going a different way than you may think. I don't think you had this, but
okay.
Do you think that aliens are capable of initiating that physically within us in order to control our behavior while we're being abducted? Is that the mechanism that they use? Are they using our brain against us?
They're highly intelligent, so their intellect and their ability to do things is far greater than our own. Whereas they may not need to give us a sedative to knock us out, whereas they know how to control the brain. They know more about the body than we do. And in many cases, there's been reports of them actually doing healings on people. And so that's a big thing too. I believe that you do the GMO with plants. I don't think we're any different. I think we're genetically modified as well. We are improved on. We try to improve on things ourselves. So, yeah, I don't think things are too much different. I think they have they're giving us their technology. We're not giving ours. We're not the intelligent ones in the solar system. We're by far the most intelligent, the least intelligent ones anyhow.
Do you think you and I are a science experiment and we're being observed for that?
Yeah, I really do. I think that the reason, I think, like I said, we try to do things to make it improvement. Every time man has, or species has been, has gone through life, they've changed. We're going to end up changing as well. As far as taking eggs and the sperm from males, I believe that we're we're being used to seed and reseed other planets as well, and maybe even Earth at a later date, because we've done so much damage to this.
So I know you shared something really personal about your problem pregnancies. Did that resolve itself, or was it always a problem? You have healthy kids or children now?
I lost 5 children before I got, and my one twin lived. He has cerebral palsy, but a very mild case of it. And then I have a very healthy daughter who was not even supposed to have, but I had anyhow. But at a young age, they couldn't understand why I had so much scar tissue, and that caused a lot of issues with pregnancies, from what I'm told.
Do you attribute that to your interaction with aliens?
I would probably say, because at that point, I was not sexually active. Like when I went to the doctor and that, at a very young age, I was not. That's a whole different story. But still, there was too much scar tissue.
Yeah, I got it.
For anything,
Any other physical problems that you've had since you began having regular visitations?
I wouldn't say anything like that. What I would say is I've become more enlightened, more understanding. It seems like when there's a question, it's like the answer flows through, which I would have no knowledge of to start with, to help others, as well as, if I have questions myself. I do have the ability to communicate with the other side, and I became more intuitive, more empathetic. I'm highly empathetic, too much so.
So how many times do you think that you've been abducted?
I have no count on that. I would say quite a few.
More than 10?
Probably at least.
And when was the last time that you can remember?
I would probably say about maybe 6 years ago.
Do you have any detailed memory of that one?
Just that I'm able to be upfront with them, which, like I said, I always held as being special. And that can't be read about, that, nobody can. No, I've never read about that. And like I said, me and the guy from Ireland, it was amazing that both of us never shared that information with anybody, but yet we held it for the same reason. We held it at a high level, that we felt so special that we couldn't share that with anybody because they would think that it was so ridiculous. But all of a sudden, you got two strangers automatically, systematically sharing that information, damn near word for word, with the other. And it was amazing.
Kim, what did they look like? I didn't get a...
I'm sorry.
Give us a picture
they're
of that.
They were like a tall gray. They're not the mean ones or whatever. We have to understand that there's so many species, and you're going to have ones that are violent. You're going to have ones that are benevolent. You're going to have ones that are neutral. And you're going to have ones that just don't even want to deal with you. But in the same respect, don't we have that here on Earth?
Absolutely.
Humans are all the same. Seriously, all the characteristics, that they kind of have, we have ourselves. And, there was a treaty that President Eisenhower signed with, and he had 3 meetings, I believe. He'd signed a treaty, and somehow either one way or the other, it got broken. Okay, well, he was given the right to take humans, do testing with the fact that we wouldn't be hurt and we would be brought back. But in the same respect, don't we do the same thing to them when a craft is crashed and there's beings on the inside? They're hauled off, they're dissected. So we can't be too upset about things that happen here, because, or, happen elsewhere, when we're doing the same thing ourselves, our government. It's not so much the people, but it's the government. And the one thing that I always had a question about is, okay, we didn't start having a lot of spacecraft crash. I mean, if they can go through light speed and things like that, and not get hit, all of a sudden you're starting to get crashes here on Earth. I mean, either is that their way of sending down the technology for us to reverse engineer, as well as maybe beings that are, expendable to be tested, just like they're taking us, doing testing on us.
I think it's
the same thing's being done.
I think it's highly likely, yeah, that if they had the opportunity and if they had people that there's only so much that you can learn about a human by studying from the outside, and even though that's a horrific thought of that type of experiment being performed, yeah, you're right. I would think that they would probably do the same thing, because definitely if we have some of them, that's what we're doing. Give me an idea of numbers. What were the most, how many aliens did you see at once? Was it more than 5, less than 10?
I would say probably about 5 or 6 at the same time. And that would be at the controls. Some would be sitting, and I'd be sitting in the middle of some of them. Some of them would be standing, monitoring or whatever.
So was it a huge craft you were in, do you feel, or was it just small? Because like you said, they're investigating a human in one part of this vehicle, I guess, and you can also see the controls of the vehicle. So to me, that would make it smaller than a mothership, maybe.
Well, honestly, the way that I think of it is they have the ability to change the molecular structure of the human body, as well as probably their own and everything else. They can go invisible, they can cloak, and they can go through doors. Like I said, the molecular structure of their body as well can go through walls, doors, ceilings, whatnot, and they can do the same. They can change the properties of our own body and then redo them.
Do you think they're creating time gaps or variances in time to time travel on a small level, room to room inside somebody's house or wherever?
I don't know that I've never really thought about it, to be honest.
How about their travel in their vehicle? I mean, you've actually seen a vehicle. You've been in the vehicle.
Sure.
I know it's hard to talk about quantum mechanics of time travel, but do you think that they're have you ever experienced any time gaps or missing time? That's always a question.
Not that I ever really kept track of, to be honest with you. But we got to remember that we have different vortexes and things on our own planet, that is possible to go through. Maybe time warps, time travel. It could be, a good example. We have it all over. We got the Devil's Triangle over on the opposite side of the world, whereas we got the Bermuda Triangle, which is straight across through the world, through the Earth, that does the same thing. And I believe that the magnetic field of Earth plays an important part, as well as let's see, just like tunnels, space, gaps in space.
Right.
And I guess what I'm thinking of, yeah. And I think what I'm thinking of is the guy that was in Florida and was going to the Bimini's or something like that. And it was supposed to have taken maybe 3 hours or something. And he did it in 20 minutes or something like that.
Right.
And that was when he went through that tunnel of that oscillated around him. And like I said, we don't know everything about our own planet, but yet we're jetting off to go somewhere else to damage somebody else's home. I think there's just too much here. Our own planet's not been explored enough. And there's just so much damage that's been done as far as litter. And then look at what we're doing to space. I mean, look at all the space trash.
Yeah, we do have a bit of activity. We have a bit of activity up there. It's incredible.
It's ridiculous.
You know, I always, in my opinion, and I've always said this in any guests that I've had, we've talked about this a bit, but I think that abductions are supposed to go off without a hitch. I mean, we're supposed to be abducted. We're supposed to contribute or basically be compliant. And I believe then we're not supposed to remember. So why do some of us remember and some of us don't?
I think that goes along with the fact it's according to what species you're talking about and which ones you're dealing with, because not all of them's going to deal with you the same way. People on a daily basis are different. So, they're going to be the same way. As far as the memories go, I believe that that we're given memories as triggers to remember, to help each other, to question things, and maybe to help even relax, to have a better understanding that, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We're not alone now. We've never been alone. And this really isn't even our planet. We were seated here. Long ago, there was, if you look at the Anunnaki, those and all of those, if you go to look at Peru, everybody, every single continent in the world has some record, whether it's a petroglyph, a hieroglyph, some kind of glyph depicting the fact that there was alien life here. Humans were not the first. You look at the biblical paintings. They painted UFOs and beings inside but did you see any fear in the faces that were painted? No, because they were common. It was common to see them. And I believe that somehow we reverted backwards.
If it was common then, why isn't it common now? Why aren't they here just walking beside us?
Who's to say they're not?
I'm just wondering if we became too violent, although we do have a history of violence for thousands of years.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's that we reverted backwards because you had your highly intelligent, supposedly they want to make you think that you came from an ape. Okay, whatever. But you gradually, you gradually changed. But where did the Anunnaki come from? I mean, where in what place in the eras were they at? They came long before.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Where did we come from?
Right. And so, there's just, and I don't believe that we're all from the same one, because we look similar only by structure, but we look the eyes, the color of the skin, each culture is different, but yet you've got pyramids that, have the same depiction on each continent as well. But yet, there's a lot of things that need to be questioned.
Do you have any close friends or relatives that are experiencers or abductees that you know of?
No. Well, yeah. I can't say no, so that would be yes.
So 6 years ago, if you had an abduction experience, do they make you anxious, and would you like them to stop? I
don't feel that. I think that we all feel something different, and it's according to our makeup. It's according to, I don't like to get into this, but it's still, everything is full circle. Religion has a big factor in things. Religion plays a big factor in the belief system, and I believe on how people react to things as well. Back when that radio when that space thing with the radio, that big story was out, everybody panicked. Now, when you have masses
War
that
of the
see,
Worlds.
right? That I couldn't. Thank you. But when you have mass people, like hundreds at a time, see crafts, nobody is panicking. There's a big difference because now there's an understanding of things. People are more open, as they were in biblical times, because that was, again, a common thing. Whereas religion has fought us off on a lot of things. They've dumbed us out, and I'm sorry to say it, but they've dumbed us out. Whereas you had to be fearful of everything. And just like I said, the word paranormal is a label for everything. Everything hides under that label. Anything that the scientists can't touch tangibly or understand falls under that category.
There's been a lot of reports from abductees and experiencers that they've received an implant. Do you feel that that's a possibility? And have you wondered if you have been implanted?
I've never really worried about it, to be honest with you. And yeah, of course, there has been implants that's been removed on many of people. And they're trackers, and they've got they will even move because of the radio frequency. But there's always going to be a way that they can track you. And I don't think that they're always going to need a tracker for it.
I feel that way too, and I think that they're right above our heads, and they have a good lay of the land where we live. I don't think they need to track us too closely because we're not really hard to find. We're pretty predictable.
Being monitored on a regular. I think we're being monitored on what I feel like it's like when I've taken pictures and it's like I see what look like eyes, even the pupils in the clouds and that, or in the sky. It's like I feel like we're in a snow globe.
Yeah,
where you've got clouds and everything around you, and we're being watched, looked down on.
It's a small world.
Sure. It's a big world for us, but a small world for them.
Exactly, especially when they're right overhead looking. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
What positives have you taken from these experiences? What have you gained and what have been helpful, or just what have been a plus?
The fact that I know now that we're not alone, that on other planets and stars, just like I always thought as a kid, there's got to be, and there is, and now I know, and that satisfied me right there. The testing, like I said, we do the same thing. We test plants, we test animals, we test each other, and when there's a craft down of one of theirs, they test the hell out of it. They dissect. So, yeah, I'm pretty damn sure that they've done the same thing to others, but like I said, there's so many species here. Phil Schneider, rest his soul, he dealt with them, the reptilians. They're all over. You don't know who your neighbor is. We're all hybrids of some type. And like I said, I don't feel that we are of all one. We may be of one type of structure, but we're different.
Do you have any thoughts?
The bloodline is different.
Do you have any thoughts about writing a book or publicly sharing these experiences in other ways?
Yeah, I've been asked several times, and matter of fact, I've probably got enough to write about 4 of them right now. Yeah, I'm in process of that.
I know it's a lot easier when you put it on paper. I know how it feels to have somebody bombarding you with questions you don't know where they're coming from, and I would love to hear that. I would love to see a book or see something written from you, just because I think one of the greatest things that people possess is that power of description, and I do want to hear what these looked like, and I do want to hear or see somehow what this craft looked like and the interior of it looked like. Those are things, that they're easy to forget if we don't practice or record them somehow, and I hope you don't lose that. But I hope on the
I don't think that ever leaves your mind. I when you see it kind of really sticks. That's something that you just really hang on to.
And that was the other side of the coin was, yes, I'm sure you hang on to a lot of that, but I'm hoping that something always remains. But then again, I hope those good thoughts are come from this, and as a way it somehow improves your life where once you share it with others and we all get more comfortable talking about it, that we can join together and somehow put an end to all these biases that we have for each other because of these experiences.
Well, and I appreciate your time having me on too with you, and your thoughts as well as your experience. And I think that a lot of social media has helped get through that, but it's our government. I mean, we know there's so many of us. There's tens of thousands of us that know, and over half of, I would say almost 3/4 of the United States either has seen, experienced, or know of somebody that's had some kind of contact. And everybody can't be wrong, but our government is so hell-bent on keeping everything a secret. But you can't take away what people have already seen and experienced for themselves. You can't tell them that. You can tell them it's a dream, but we know better. A dream, it's going to come off maybe dream-like because it's going to be less evasive. You accept a dream much faster than you maybe would experience. You would accept something frightening, like maybe an alien or something else. But it's less evasive if it comes off as a dream. It's more acceptable.
And it's hard. It's hard when things invade your dream space. But then again, if you've learned to live with it and learn to deal with it and accept that we are part of a bigger life beyond this planet, I think there's hope that there is hope for humans, and there is hope for us to be a part of a bigger race.
And I agree. And shows like yours, books that people write of their own experiences, social media groups. I've got one of my own. I've got friends of mine that also have, it's Human Alien Taboo. I'm going to give him a plug, as well as my own is not so paranormal, which I accept everything in there because, like I said, that's a big label that everything falls under. But I think that people in the last, I'm going to go out and say 30 years, have been more accepting and have seen more than what they had and was open to admit long ago.
So you do have a couple of groups on Facebook, and I saw those earlier today. Mention those, please.
A friend of mine has Human Alien Taboo. That would be on there, and mine is Not So Paranormal. I belong to quite a few groups, and I help. We exchange information. We help each other, and we don't stand for anybody that is going to downgrade, going to ridicule. They are out so fast. I have no problem putting somebody out of my group. I don't care how long. I don't care if you was the first one in. You'll be the quickest one out. I won't stand for it. I know what it's about. I know how it feels. I won't allow anybody to feel like that.
And we'll list those groups from Facebook on the podcast note. And again, my website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. And that's where you can find the links to this show and others, as well as my email address. If you have questions or comments for my guests tonight, please feel free to ask, and I'll gladly forward those to Kim. Kimberly O'Connor has been my guest, and thank you so much, Kim, for reaching out and becoming a part of my alien life.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the chance to come forward and maybe let my experience help somebody else along the way too.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by ELEON. You can find all ELEON's work online at Heart Dance Records.